In a text preserved since the 4th century, Adam is standing in darkness, still waiting for a promise made to him at the edge of Eden. In our last video, an angel told Seth and Eve that the oil of the tree of life was not for the present. It was being kept for a future resurrection. This is the text that claims to show what that promise actually looked like when it was finally kept. It is called the Gospel of Nicodemus, and its second half carries a name almost no modern Christian recognizes: the Descensus Christi ad inferos, Christ's descent into hell. The text opens strangely. It does not begin in the underworld. It begins with a council in Jerusalem. Nicodemus, Joseph of Arimathea, and members of the Jewish leadership, including Annas, Caiaphas, and a teacher named Gamaliel, receive a report that cannot be explained. 2 men, sons of a priest named Simeon, the same Simeon who once held the infant Jesus in the temple, have risen from their graves. The council goes to the tombs themselves. They find them empty. The 2 men, Quirinus and Lucius, are found alive in the city of Arimathea. The council brings them before the Sanhedrin, gives them parchment, and asks them to write down exactly what they experienced during the 3 days their bodies lay dead. What follows is their written account, embedded directly inside the text. According to their testimony, they were among the righteous dead waiting in the underworld, not a lake of fire, a vast, shadowed holding place, where every soul who had died since the beginning of the world remained, waiting. Among them, Adam, the first man, Abraham, Isaiah, David, John the Baptist, who had arrived only recently and told the others that the one he had baptized in the Jordan was coming. The text says, "A great light suddenly broke into the darkness, a light none of them had seen since they closed their eyes in death." Adam turned to his son Seth and asked him to recall the promise the angel had given at the gates of Eden centuries before. Seth confirms it, word for word, the same promise from the text we covered last time. This light was the fulfillment. The text then does something almost theatrical. It personifies 2 figures: Hades, ruler of the underworld itself, and Satan, described here as the prince of this world. Satan arrives first, boasting. He tells Hades he has just orchestrated the death of a man named Jesus of Nazareth, and urges Hades to prepare to receive him as a new captive. Hades responds with something closer to dread than triumph. He recalls the dead this Jesus has already recovered from his domain, Lazarus among them, and warns Satan that if this is truly the Son of God, his arrival will not go the way Satan expects. While they argue, a voice thunders from outside the gates, quoting the ancient psalm, "Lift up your gates, you rulers, and be lifted up, you everlasting doors, and the King of glory shall come in." Hades demands to know who this King of glory is. The voice answers, "The Lord, strong and mighty in battle." This exchange repeats twice in the text, framed almost as a liturgical call and response. Before the gates of hell are physically broken apart, Satan is seized and bound in chains, handed over to Hades himself as punishment for what his arrogance has cost the underworld. Christ enters, and the text says his light fills the entire realm of the dead completely. Christ approaches the righteous directly. He reaches out his hand first to Adam and lifts him. The same man who once stood in a river for 40 days doing penance, whose son begged for oil at a gate that would not open, is now the very first soul Christ chooses to raise. Abraham, Isaiah, David, and the rest follow, led out of the underworld in a long procession behind them. The text describes John the Baptist walking ahead of the group as a herald, just as he had once walked ahead of Christ in life, announcing to the dead exactly as he had once announced to the living. Quirinus and Lucius end their written account here, describing how they themselves were part of that procession, brought back to bodily life for a short time, specifically to testify to what had happened. After giving their account to the council, the text says they were never seen again. It is important to say clearly that the Gospel of Nicodemus was never accepted as scripture by any major branch of the church, and scholars are confident it was composed centuries after the events it describes, likely compiled in its current form during the 4th or 5th century, drawing on older oral traditions that were already circulating. But its influence is difficult to overstate. This is very likely the origin, or at minimum the most detailed early expansion, of the line still recited today in the Apostles' Creed: "He descended into hell." For over 1,000 years, this exact scene, Christ breaking the gates, reaching for Adam's hand, was the single most reproduced image in Christian art, painted on church ceilings and carved into cathedral doors across Europe, long before most of those congregations could read the text itself. What this apocryphal account offers is not new doctrine so much as a completed circle. Genesis leaves Adam outside a locked gate. An apocryphal text about his death leaves his son begging at that same gate for oil that is refused. And this text, centuries later, closes that loop entirely, with Christ himself walking into the dark to finish what an angel once promised was still to come. Whether you read it as theological elaboration or as something closer to memory passed down in symbol, the Gospel of Nicodemus was answering a question early believers could not let go of. What exactly happened to the ones who died first, the ones who never got to see the empty tomb for themselves? The Bible tells you Christ died and rose on the 3rd day. It says almost nothing about what filled the space between. This text does. If stories like this move you, subscribe to the Vanished Scriptures, where every week we uncover another text the modern Bible left behind.